Good evening. The November 16th regular meeting of the Oyster River School District School Board will come to order. And let's see, first up is, I'll mention that Tom Newkirk, our chair, is out tonight. He's away, so I am filling in. First up is the approval of our agenda. Have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move that we approve the agenda as listed.
Okay.
Second.
Is there a second? Second by Maria. All in favor? Okay, so we have 6 in favor and the student rep in favor. Public comments? No public comments tonight. Okay. An approval of the November 2nd minutes. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I move that we accept the minutes as presented of November 2nd, 2016.
Okay. Kenny motion, and seconded by Al. Any corrections? Sarah?
Page 4, under the Student Senate report, I think it's the last sentence. If we could just add Ireland after the word northern, about the students visiting.
Okay. Other corrections? Kenny?
Maria.
Oh, Maria?
Well, on page 2, I was interested in the comment by Christine Orliac, who comes from France, where schools start at 9, but they have the same problems with tardiness.
So any corrections, or is it okay as stated?
I would like to put in that they start at 9.
Oh, start at 9, okay.
And they have the same problem with sleep deprivation and tardiness. So, and I had another one.
Can you,
That's it.
oh, that's it, okay. And Kenny?
I had on page 6 and also when we were talking about that option 6, and the motion passed 6-1 with both myself and Troy voting against. But there's nothing in the minutes that really explained why I voted against, and I think that would be important to have that in there.
So do you have a suggestion as far as where you'd like to put that in?
You know, it'd be maybe sometime in the discussion, because there was a lengthy discussion that we had about that issue. And the way it appears here is we had a motion and kind of had amendments, and then we voted on it. So
We can get that off the video.
You want it up to where it says the board had an in-depth discussion on the proposed start times and the impact on the busing system? Do you want, like, your comments to be up there?
Laurie, we can get that off the video. I mean, the
Okay.
conversation was pretty extensive, so, to try to reconstruct it here would be hard. We can just go to the video and
I
put
don't
it
mean
in.
to exclude other voices, but it's a very significant decision we made, and I think it warrants hearing the voices that were at the table.
Okay. Other corrections? Troy?
On page 5, during my student poll results, it says, members of the board thank Troy and the Student Senate for coordinating this. Unfortunately, I was not able to involve the Senate in the making of the poll. I would have liked to, but due to the time constraints, I was unable to.
So what's the correction, Troy?
Just, I guess, me for coordinating this. I don't know. I feel,
Just delete reference
Yeah.
to the Student Senate?
yeah,
Is that what you're?
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
Did you catch that, Laurie?
You have that one? Okay.
Was unable to due to the time constraints, unfortunately.
Okay. Kenny?
So what I would ask, and Maria, the term that we use when we postpone, or what do we do when we want to have it come back again at the next meeting?
Postpone.
Postpone. So I'd like to postpone voting, and we'll see what the changes look like, and then we could vote with the changes that were added, because we're not
Okay,
We've not talked about the changes.
well, what do you, I guess I'm confused. Additional changes to the minutes?
Kenny's changes in particular.
Right.
I mean, I think,
Okay,
you
I
know,
got
that's
it,
a-
I got it,
That's
okay.
a substantive.
Got it, so, all right. Well, let's see if we have other corrections, and then we can
Okay.
kind of entertain that, postponing that. Does I know I have a couple of changes. On page 2, go back to page 2. Under, and then this is a real simple one, when Brian Kavanaugh was speaking, it says face instead of fact, so just change it as scientific face to a scientific fact. And then on page 3, under, let's see, where was it? Oh, under Todd, let's see. I have the words "be added." Did you find that, Laura? I know, but I'm trying to find where I actually wanted to put it in now, and I can't find it. Mentioning moving away.
The science results, is it?
Yeah, it was after the science generation, so it was right after that, you added.
Be added, just the words "be added."
Yep.
Okay. And then on page 3, under my comment, I just want to add commended Meredith Freeman Capel and the cast. So just add the words "and the cast." And one last one on page 8. There's a reference to guidance department. Please change that to counseling department. And that was it. Does anybody else have any changes? All right, and so now what you're suggesting is that we postpone voting so that you can see the wording of the change. So do we
I'll second that.
second that?
Yeah,
Okay.
got it.
Okay. Any other comments about, all right, all in favor? Oh, Troy?
So are we putting in a rationale for just Kenny's vote for it? Because, or against it? Because I had a similar rationale, and do we just include my name in that, in the voting against it? If we do add that, are we adding that?
Yeah, we're going to go right to the video and pick up the comments
Okay.
you guys both made and include them
Okay.
in their essence
Okay.
in the notes, yeah.
Yeah.
I had
And
a
then
similar thought process,
Yeah.
and just based on student opinion.
And then we'll vote on the meeting minutes at our next meeting then. So
Great.
all in favor of waiting until the next meeting to vote on to approve the meeting minutes, okay? 6 in favor, and the student rep is in favor. Okay.
What tough meetings, your first.
My gosh, all those corrections, jeez. Okay, announcements, commendations, and comments from the district.
Maybe you do need the microphone. I want to introduce you to Andrew McEwen. Why am I introducing you to Andrew McEwen? Saturday, we cut 7 cords of wood that were donated by Eversource and Orion Tree Service for our sugaring operation. And there were 25 adults, 10 children, and he was one of the biggest leaders. He manned the wood pile. His dad taught him how to do it, and then he took over. And he was the boss. He was telling his principal what to do, and his principal was not offended. He did it very gracefully. And as a consequence, he never stopped working from 9 in the morning until 1 in the afternoon. I think he had a piece of pizza somewhere along the way, and he would just bring one wheelbarrow full of wood to another wheelbarrow full of wood, and then he would say, "Mr. Harrington, let's have a line, and we'll line up all the kids, and we'll pass the wood from one person to another, and it'll move faster. So I wanted to recognize him and the 25 other adults and 10 children who, for me, it was like looking at a rose with all of the, were you stiff on Monday morning? No? I wonder why.
Rob, do you want a picture? Do you want a picture?
I got a few.
You got it.
Oh, you
Okay.
did?
All right.
Okay, awesome.
So I just wanted to bring him here tonight to congratulate him. The work ethic has been ingrained somehow by someone. So, you... Thank you for coming, and now go home and do your homework. Yes, Taste of Mohammed is on, it won't be canceled, 5:30 to 7:30 tomorrow night, please come if you want.
What happened? What is that?
5:30 to 7:30, the Taste of Mohammed. Taste of Mohammed. Some guy is gonna make curry for everyone. And then to follow up on the pumpkin presentation, which was rough, it's our first attempt at that sort of thing. And the reason that I wanted to show that is I want to show you what it's, the real intent of all of that activity and the joy surrounded and the collecting of it. And I went into a classroom today and was looking up for a piece of evidence that I could show. And I looked at a whole series of pictures and writing in Liz Schmidt's classroom. And I picked one. I said, this is great. I see crunchy, buttery popcorn falling from people walking on the path. I hear soft leaves crunching quickly when people are loudly walking by. I smell buttery popcorn and sweet apple cider from the beginning of the path. I taste wax from the candles that got lit in me. I feel crunchy leaves quickly falling off the tree and falling on me. I'm a happy pumpkin. Her mother is sitting right there. Thank you.
Other district announcements, commendations? Nothing else from the district? Okay, from the board? Kenny?
Last week, there was a showing at the high school of a film about technology and its impact on our adolescents. And Al Howland and I were on a panel, and Denise, you were there. And the movie really introduced a lot of food for thought, and I do believe it probably would be appropriate to have on a future agenda for our board to start to talk about that use of technology, smartphones and whatever that happens in our middle school and high school. And it is a growing area of concern. I know a lot of parents are very concerned. I certainly don't know the answer, but I think it is worthy of a board level discussion. And I suggest that for a future meeting.
5 students at the middle school?
I'm sorry?
5 students?
The movie was shown at the high school? Oh.
No, but one about at the middle school.
Oh, and high school.
high school.
And really throughout our curriculum, it's as I think, part of it is how we introduce technology in elementary school and kind of the learning of how to use that technology, but also learning how to control the use of technology. So it's an elementary issue. It goes to the middle school with kids bringing devices to school, and certainly in the high school. And just so we have a kind of that we think about it and try to have a coherent strategy to make sure we're doing what is best.
All right. Other announcements, Troy?
Yeah, well, I'll talk in my student senate report. I had one, the students, the highly anticipated arrival of the Northern Ireland Irish students was a resounding success. We had a lot of interaction with them, or I myself personally in the student senate, and they reported that our school was the favorite one that they attended, and we were the most welcoming for them, and I think that that is a great thing that our students are, getting really behind pretty cool opportunities like this, and I think it really speaks numbers for our district that we have such cool things and that other people speak highly of us in that way.
Okay.
Could I ask you a question? I don't, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, and did you talk about the political situation in Northern Ireland and kind of what those students face, and talk about our political situation? Is there?
Absolutely, yeah. So we started the day with kind of a discussion where we split a U.S. history class, Miss Van Dyke's U.S. history class, into two groups, and then the chaperones from the Senate were also in them, and then they split the Irish kids into two groups, and we had two great discussions about what's going on with their life, how their day-to-day life differs from our day-to-day life, and how is it similar, and we just really got to know them and what their life is like. And I think it was really great to see another culture and see what they're going through, and we did talk about their politics and some of ours, and it was a great learning experience, and I really highly recommend Friends Forever is a great organization, and I would love it. I won't be here, but I would have liked to be if they come back next year with new kids, and I really think that it was a great experience.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Troy. Al?
I was just going to do a quick one about that panel. I think what was really interesting about the panel on technology, and what was great was we had an Oyster River High School student there, and it's always good when we start talking about implementing policies and that to actually hear the perspective of students once in a while. And I thought she was fantastic. She really was articulate. It's not the easiest thing to sit up in front of an auditorium with a bunch of people, and she was great. So it reflects really well in our school when we see kids do that.
Okay. Troy?
Yeah, just one thing on that. In my students' Senate report, I was going to speak to it. So we actually had a meeting today discussing that exact thing and a cell phone policy and what the students would think. So a lot of people on the Senate brought it to me that they would want to talk maybe in front of the school board or have me bring something to you guys to talk about the technology policy, and what we see are some concerns and what we think is a good thing to implement, and it could help guide your decision if you do choose to implement a different policy or any policy going forward. So.
Okay. Yes, Maria?
I have two issues or questions. One is about the start time. We've been talking about it the 2 years and been getting lots of information on the science that adolescents have a different rhythm based on daylight stuff. And we just had daylight savings time, which has changed the daylight rhythm, so to speak, by an hour. So I would find it extremely interesting, which means that the students, your inner self, has changed by an hour in favor of sleeping more. I would find it very interesting if we could have some kind of report, and I'm assuming the data is available, of tardiness before daylight savings and tardiness after daylight savings. If it's the same, changing by an hour doesn't do anything. I got an answer from Aaron, whose name I forget.
Sure.
Sharp. saying she hadn't thought of it before, and she was going to do some research to see if this was something. The other thing is, I brought it up before, and I don't want to set anybody off, about the one parent, and I realize that's a small sample, talking about bullying on the buses. And I don't, when I think bullying, I don't always think of reportable offenses. I think about the climate, so to speak. And I am extremely concerned that the climate in this country has changed by legitimizing expressions and just talk that is not what I would like to see. So I would be very interesting if we could have a survey of parents about, it's possible that this one parent was off the chart, but on the other hand, she might be the tip of the iceberg. And as I say, I'm not worried about people getting beaten up or that kind of stuff that they would report to principals. But just if she feels that the tone is such that it's not the best. And the survey would put my mind to ease. Because I think we really now need to keep our eyes open, that we keep everybody safe, both physically but also emotionally.
Okay. Any
So-
other,
If there's no objection on the rest of the board, let something like this be conducted.
So wouldn't it make more sense to survey the drivers in terms of what they perceive the climate to be on their buses?
Well-
Because they're on the buses.
That might be good too, but I don't expect the drivers to necessarily know what the climate is in the back of the bus,
Well,
So both.
I would expect the drivers to know what the climate is on their buses, because it's no different than a classroom teacher recognizing what the climate is in their
But he's
classrooms.
busy driving. The teacher is
Exactly.
busy concentrating on her students. So yeah, the more input we can have, the better it is. But parents, if it comes home to them,
And that would add another piece of data that we collect when, Maria, is, how many times the building administrators are dealing with discipline related to bus behavior.
right.
So we
And
collect that.
that is a pretty high incident. I'm worried about
More subtle.
the subtle.
well, I'm kind of wondering if maybe, part of when we're looking at, because we are, one of our, I think, things that we want to focus on is the mental health of our students. That came out of a whole late start, and certainly any kind of perception or bullying that goes on, to me, that would probably be part of all of that. So maybe
Right.
we can kind of look at that, when we delve into the whole issue of mental.
I'm never especially interested in the punishable incidences. I'm interested in the things, since we are an educational institution, where we need to talk about it.
All right. Any other, I'm sorry.
In a way, too, I think it really ties into our talking about technology, because I think the forms of stress on our students and even the form of intimidation or bullying has now moved from what we knew when we were kids to cyberspace. And so I think it's all part of that same discussion in a way.
All right.
So.
All right, probably we should move on.
One more
Yeah.
quick. Before the election, we did have the concern about how our school, because it was a polling place, had therefore the laws about carrying weapons, because we're defined as a polling place, it changed the law from being a school. And so the law says if you're a polling place, that kind of took precedence over our school being a school. And maybe before we get too close to our next elections, in this last election, wonderful, there's no problem and everything went well, but it might be appropriate that we consider that, as we'll have a March election coming up where school's not closed as it was, and we'll have future non-presidential elections, and just to see if we want to do something different. So that might be another future discussion item.
Okay. Any other announcements, commendations from anyone else? I had one. I just wanted to commend the entire administrative team for the work that was done for the budget workshop that we had, last week, I guess. It was just, I felt like the information, it was very clear, and just the amount of work that had gone into it. So I just really want to say a thank you to Dr. Morris and the entire administrative team for that. Okay, so moving on, Assistant Superintendent's report.
I'll keep this short because you'll hear from me again in a few minutes on the crisis plan, but I did want to follow up on a couple of things I've mentioned to you in the past. On November 3rd, the State Board of Education did officially approve Next Generation Science Standards as the science standards for the state. So I think it only validates the fact that Oyster River has been pretty much ahead of the ballgame on that. We've been really working on aligning our curricula really over the last 3 or 4 years. This past Tuesday, when Election Day was going on, it was a teacher professional day, and there was some great work taking place across the district. One of the really great things that was happening took place with the elementary schools over at Meharmet. We spent the morning kind of beginning our dialogue around next generation science standards. One of the things that I was very, very pleased to see is just how much work has been done long before we really officially initiated this effort as a school district. In particular, I was just blown away by the work the kindergarten teachers had already done with aligning things. So I really think we're in a really, really, really good place with regards to science standards. So I just wanted to mention that. There was also a lot of other really good stuff going on that professional day. We had social emotional learning group working, some great input acquired from the staff in terms of beginning to plan ahead for what the social emotional learning program might be at the 2 different buildings. In addition to that, we had some really good conversations between middle and high school. All of the departments met, all of the teachers from grades 5 to 12, looking at competencies and having a lot of really good conversations. Math in particular, we spent a lot of time focusing on the strategic goal of from grades 6 to 12 and really beginning to look at that. In fact, we followed up on that again this afternoon with a group of math teachers. So it really was, so if anybody's ever telling you the professional days are not as valuable, these are really, really high priority. They really help us, keep the good stuff going on. So anyway, I just wanted to let you know that a lot of great work happened on that day, and we are now officially got the green light to fully embrace and adopt and move forward with Next Gen. So thanks.
Thank you. Okay, Superintendent's report.
Just a couple of quick items. Just wanted to point out that we did put the superintendent's newsletter out, not just through our own outlet, which puts it into about 6,000 devices, but we used Friday Update, so it was part of the Friday Update. We got it out to eCryer. We put hard copies in the towns, and so we're definitely trying to distribute that in a way that's richer than it has in the past, with past efforts. And then I continue to meet with the Meharmet staff. I'm meeting with them in the morning. We've identified the characteristics of Dennis's successor, and now we're going to be starting to craft questions around those characteristics. So that's it.
Okay. Okay, Business Administrator.
just wanted to give you an update on Orchard Drive. My plan is to put that out to bid next week or the week after with a due date probably around the second week in January. I think I gave you a copy of what we discussed the last time we talked about the bidding process and the actual bid document. Minimum bid, $300,000, we agreed on that. And that's it. Unless you have any questions, I'll move forward with that. All good? Great, thank you.
Student Senate report.
Okay, so as a Senate, we've discussed many things over the last couple times, one of which today we did discuss a cell phone policy, and we tossed around some ideas, what we thought was best, and then we're going to, I mean, if the board is open to it, we would like to maybe put something forth formally, or even just in my Student Senate report for what we think. So we're working on finalizing that. I don't know if the next meeting would be the one where we focus on cell phones or not, but I think we're working on that. And we're, one of our senators has proposed a community dinner to promote unity. So we are allowing him to kind of head an effort to do that with our backing. And so that's an interesting thing going forward. And then
Sorry, I didn't quite follow. What is it that you're doing with that last statement?
Community dinner.
Promoting what?
a community dinner that promotes unity and togetherness, unity and togetherness. We're formulating kind of more of a more formal version of it, and another senator is heading up that effort, and we're backing him. So I'm not hugely in the know about it yet because it's in the workings.
Do you know whether he's working with Doris Demers on that?
I do not. We have not gotten that far.
Okay. So you just want to...
Should I tell him to work with Doris
If you
Demers?
give him Doris's name, then,
Okay.
you know, in terms of organizing the meal and so
Okay.
forth, she'd do all of that for you.
Oh, great. I'll make sure to let him know.
Yeah.
And we talked about sort of working more with our senators to get more student voices, have them come to us, be more approachable, have maybe some senators be responsible, or one senator be responsible for an allotted amount of kids to make it so the students can come to us more easily, sort of how like a regular Senate would work. And we think that that'll help gauge student concerns better than we have been in the past.
Thank you, Troy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and then so it looks like it's up Todd and Heather for the crisis response plan.
Yeah, just to kind of get things started, I just want to refresh your memory kind of where this concept came from. You may recall 2 years ago, the school board adopted a strategic goal to really develop a mental health committee of our district mental health professionals to really begin looking at, reviewing, and understanding the needs of our student population and begin to make recommendations on how to move things forward to better provide for the needs of our students related to mental health issues. Sadly, during last school year, we did have a very traumatic event with the suicide of a 10-year-old, and it certainly kind of focused the committee in terms of where our attentions were. The board, in your wisdom and certainly with the agreement of the Mental Health Committee, developed a goal for this year that really was an attempt to try to bring those two kind of concepts together, the desire to look at the overall mental health well-being of our students, but also to look at the more immediate crisis response planning that the district has. The goal you adopted this year, real simply, is to engage the community in a dialogue about mental health and wellness of our student population and develop a K-12 trauma action plan for school board review. And really what we're doing here today, we're bringing you the draft of that plan that we have developed. One of the things I really would like to emphasize is that it's important to keep in mind that when you talk about crisis and trauma response, there's lots of things that are going on in a school system like ours that are about emergency response, crisis planning, and those kind of things. I don't want anyone to say that we created a plan where one did not exist in any way, shape, or form. I think what we became very aware of as a result of the events last year and other similar incidents in previous years is the need to have a coordinated plan for how the district as a whole responds in crisis and traumatic situations. So it's important that as you think about the crisis plan we're sharing with you today, you need to think of it in terms of our whole emergency response plan. We have plans for, when there's a toxic spill. We have plans for fire drills. We have plans for active threat situations in the school. In fact, the middle and high school have been working and practicing those in the last couple of days. So it's important that you see this as being a part of a much bigger picture. So some of the terminology you will see in the part that you're seeing, things like incident commander and things like that, you need to keep in mind that the district and building level emergency plans are all vetted through Homeland Security, and so the terminology and the concepts that are in there, we're trying to use similar language, so we're trying to keep that similar. So that's the first thing I want to kind of get across, is that we're thinking of this as part of a more comprehensive plan. But obviously this particular plan is directed at how we provide for the immediate mental health, emotional support, the counseling support needs when a traumatic incident happens. Because anytime that there's a major incident that gets people's attention, you recognize that there's a certain amount of trauma involved. And obviously when you're dealing with a population as large as a school district of 2,100 people, the range of reactions and needs is going to be very different. It's going to vary depending on the age level. It's going to vary depending on how close the person might be to whatever incident it is you're talking about. So what we've tried to do is to craft a plan that allowed us to have a broad oversight, but also allow it to be tailored to whatever the individual circumstances are. Some issues might be very specific to a particular building, and there's no reason to broaden it out and have it become a district-wide response. However, such as the incident from last February, it's clear that that was a community event that really required a coordinated community response, and our intent is to try to create a mechanism to have those conversations and make sure that all of those things are being considered before you determine exactly how the response is. So just to kind of go through some of the things that have been accomplished this year related to developing this plan. Over the summer we had, how many people involved, Heather? I'm trying to remember.
50, about 50.
Okay. We had about 50 people involved working with Dr. Mason from the International Trauma Center, beginning to look at the issue of, trauma, mental health first aid, those kind of things. So that's something we've done, and it's created a lot of expertise. All of our mental health providers and a number of our teachers went through that. As we've talked about before, we were the launch site for Change Direction here in the state, which is really about encouraging mental health awareness and the idea of recognizing the signs of mental health and really trying to promote that. I'm sure you've seen signs all over the district regarding that. Just completed the Connect Gatekeeper training over the last couple of, we started in October and with a group of, I think, 30 staff members, and then continued in a trainer-trainer model on the 7th and 8th with a number of teachers to get them ready to be able to provide this training to the entire district eventually, so we're working to do that. And then obviously we're, as a committee, looking at youth risk behavior survey data, and we're looking at other things that we need to begin to target and identify as issues of response. So and again, going back to my initial point about this is one slice, we're looking at the crisis plan, but please know there's a lot of other stuff that's going on there. So Heather?
So first, I just want to acknowledge the willingness of the participants in both the summer training and the Connect training. The 30 individuals that took part in the Connect training in October, of that 10 went on to do the 2 additional days for the training, which was, I was part of that. It was a pretty pretty intense 2 days, but we now have a total of 11 trainers in the district who can offer that to both our faculty and staff and the greater community. And they're all doing that willingly. They're not required to do that. They've kind of stepped forward indicating that that's something that they're passionate about. So I just want to make sure that we acknowledge their efforts there. As Todd mentioned, we had a pretty detailed crisis plan at the high school, and unfortunately over the past 4 or so years we've had to use that a number of times. Having the crisis plan with specific protocols in place really was helpful in those very difficult events. It kind of helped to guide us in terms of the steps we should take moving forward. In addition to that, having the resources like NAMI New Hampshire, specifically Ann Douglas, who we worked closely with, as well as DBAR, has helped to ensure that every time we're dealing with a traumatic event, we're adhering to best practices in each of those instances. And with the number of events that we've had in the past few years, we've had the opportunity really to take a look at the plan each time and revise and kind of refine what we had. So that's kind of a place where we started the process. In addition to that, I think I mentioned last board meeting, I'm a member of the New Hampshire Directors of School Counseling Association, and we have a really active listserv. So once again, I put out a call for sample crisis plans, any advice or experiences people had, and I got quite a few responses. So I've kind of listed a few of the schools that we pulled some information from to create our plan. We worked with Dr. Macy as well as Ann Douglas to talk about the components of a crisis plan that are key and recommendations that they might have. So we really looked at the plan that the high school had, incorporated a number of features from the other schools, and then the draft was given to the mental health committee. So we looked at that, feedback was taken, I revised it once again, gave it to our district leadership team. And so the plan that you guys have seen is kind of where we are at this point. So you guys all got that right? Okay. So as Todd mentioned, the plan will integrate with the emergency plan. This portion specifically deals with the aftermath of a traumatic event. So it kind of slides into that binder that we have for the district. Todd mentioned kind of the overarching district level response. Really, the team at the district level is to determine the breadth of impact and how wide the net would be cast for the crisis. We would need to take the building template that you have and adapt it for each building and level, ensuring that developmentally appropriate and age-appropriate steps are embedded in that plan. Because I think, obviously, we know very well that the plan we have at the high school probably is not going to work at our elementary schools. One of the things I found most helpful, just from one of the other schools, was the breakdown of each day, kind of taking each day's process and really spelling out those steps. Having done this a number of times, reading through that, it was kind of like, yes, we do this, we do this, we do this. But what that does, and what I think it will do, particularly for me, is remove the process, and this is going to sound kind of strange, but remove the thinking process from that moment and put it into action, which is really what we need in those moments. It's an incredibly emotionally charged time, so to not have to think about the steps but actually do them is very helpful. The crisis response checklist was another piece that just sitting through a debriefing of each of those events, detailing what we did to try to improve further, record keeping, that kind of thing. The checklist was really something that came from that. The other piece that was really an interesting concept that we learned about this summer with Dr. Macy was the concept of an orientation. And what an orientation is a brief information session which can be held for either your faculty and staff or the community at large. And really it's an attempt to share the information that's available. Some examples he gave was an orientation could be as simple as saying, thank you for coming. Unfortunately, we don't have any information at this time. On X date, we will have an update from the authorities, and we'll be able to share information at a future orientation. So really opening the communication lines up between the school staff and the community to make sure that everybody's on the same page, and also to ensure that everybody's receiving accurate information. And I think the other piece that he suggested was oftentimes he'll have a panel. In a way, he'll have, if it was, an example he gave was a sudden cardiac arrest of a student, they might have EMTs to talk about what that response would be for any student. They might have a physician to kind of highlight that it's a rare occurrence to ease anxiety, school personnel to talk about the response for students. So really just, again, communicating with the public and the community to ease those anxieties. The other piece that we have always had are things like the handouts, the resources, self-care sheets, how to talk to your children. But in the moment, we're looking for those and trying to find them. So at this point, they're going to be compiled as part of the plan. So they're kind of a grab-and-go resource, if you will. In addition, the SAMHSA toolkit, which is 230 pages, will be attached, and that has a number of resources for both pre- and postvention for suicide. So I think it's going to be a great compilation of all that information. So moving forward, the plan you have now is implementable. We want to have Dr. Mesa review it to make any recommendations he might have kind of in our final version. Again, we're going to adapt it for the building levels, and I think that's going to be probably the priority at this point. And any plan like this has ongoing review, so it's not finalized. We say finalized version, but it's kind of the finalized version for now until we find something that we need to change. For instance, today I was working on the checklist. We're not really happy with it, so we're kind of trying to retool that to meet our specific needs. And then the last piece is practice of the crisis protocol. Kind of, again, getting that rote memorization of the steps that are needed to remove that thinking piece, if you will, and in the moment. So we're hoping to do some, I guess, tabletop exercises where we present a traumatic event and kind of talk through the steps that we would take. Which will probably yield some revisions to the plan as well. So, I think ongoing revision is key. And I think with any plan, we're going to keep revising, keep looking at it. We certainly don't want to be experts in using a crisis plan. I hope I don't have to use it again, but with using it as many times as we have, with that experience, it does help to have a clear protocol, have very specific steps, and also to have, now with the district, kind of plan those resources at your fingertips. So, thank you. Do you have any questions?
Maria?
I don't know if this is a legitimate question, but kind of a follow-up. This week was Quest Jagger's birthday. Of course, he was a senior, so he would have moved on anyway. But the 10-year-old, his friends, next year, if they've been going to birthday parties or whatever, are we helping? I remember in the 70s when my younger son was in 4th grade, his best friend was killed in a gun accident. And that was a big crisis that year, but next year it was still kind of bubbling up. So I don't know where my question comes in, but is that something that you have thought?
Well, I would say in any event like that, the counselors are certainly mindful of dates, anniversary dates, things like that. So specifically, I don't know, Jay, if you want to speak to the middle school.
Sure, I can tell you our school counselors are still very actively involved with students that were impacted by that tragic event. They remain very close, And of course, some students were impacted much greater than others, particularly that were very close to James. So I can tell you we're still very actively engaging those students in how they're doing, and I can give you my word we'll continue to do so as long as they're middle school students. And then after that, I'm sure Heather and others, again, James not going to be forgotten, and we still have several years to go where the students have been directly impacted by that event.
So is this part of the plan, kind of an addendum or something?
In terms of
Actually, yeah, it's actually, if, in the breakdown of, it says day 1, 2, 3, there's 1 month after, 11 months after, so that is part of it.
Thank you.
I just want to comment. I'm really glad when I look at this because I think a lot of people tend to just focus on the crisis part. And I like how you guys are attacking this a totality, the pre-crisis or preventing the crisis part as well as it, because it really, we live in a tremendously anxious time, it seems, right now. There's a lot of anxiety, and the focus in preventative part, I think, is really important, and it's great that you guys are doing it.
Thank you.
Other questions?
And it seems like it says it, but kind of you have building level plans personalized by each building and level. So does each school kind of have a team that kind of is the leadership for that school? Is that how you've set that up?
Yeah, so each school would develop their own school-based crisis team, because as Todd mentioned, there are going to be times when I'm thinking of maybe a death of a parent in a particular school, which certainly has an impact at the school, but is maybe not impacting the entire district. So that team at that school could handle that incident themselves, and that would be determined in the building.
And one of the other things, too, is we've tried to make sure that we've created this sort of a network here, because the other thing, you could have something occur that's very specific to a school, but they might need the resources that another school has to come over to the school to help support that. So we've tried to make sure that those kind of things are part of the plan, where that's part of the consideration at the initial stage is, what resources need to be diverted to that school. And it might mean all the counselors in the district are going to the Mohammed School for the day to kind of deal with something. So it could be that.
And maybe.
Go ahead.
And kind of the conversation has been geared to something happening to staff, a student, whatnot. Is this also focused on world events as well? I mean, thinking of...
Yeah, I think it could be applied to anything. I think we're using the term traumatic event. So again, that district team would deem, is this an event that warrants a traumatic crisis response? So if you think back to like maybe 9/11, like you would definitely say, yeah, we would implement some of the strategies. It would be a little bit different in that you wouldn't have one person or one item to tie them to, but it might be going through who's most impacted by this, identifying if it's service related, are there service families with service members, things like that. So yeah, I think it could definitely be applied that way.
And how the emotional level of
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
kids and how they process that as well. So, right.
And I think, too, that would be where the post-traumatic stress management would come in terms of the debriefing strategies that we learned this summer, just kind of processing some of those emotional reactions to things. So, yeah, I think it definitely could apply.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay. Any others? Thank you
Thank you.
very much.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, discussion items, retirement incentive.
Denise?
Yep.
Would you mind if I asked if Jim Rizicki's presentation
Yeah.
on the solar piece comes first? Because I expect it'll be a shorter conversation.
Yeah, that's
and then
fine.
he can
That's
go home.
fine. Yeah. So, Jim, on the solar project, service building solar project.
Thank you, Board. Good evening. So commonly, over the past couple of years, Susan and I are frequently asked, what are you guys doing about solar? Where is it going in the district, and how are you guys going to fit that into the puzzle? So this has been a really long process. I can say honestly that even though all the workshops I've been to, people that I've talked to, I still don't know everything there is to know, especially with the financing aspect. So this has been an ongoing process for 2 years. I just want to let you guys know that, and the community know that we had roof evaluations done by 3 different solar companies over the course of that time. So what I'm about to bring to you now just includes the service building. It's not, that's one question. It's like, what's the high school look like? What are the other schools? So we are in the midst of working out plans for that. So every year, solar kind of changes a little bit, not necessarily the capacity or the equipment, but actually the financing mechanism, incentives. So that's a huge variable in solar as a whole. So what I really want to do is just give you just some quick facts about why we're choosing a solar project on the service building. So this plan, we felt most comfortable going with Revision Energy, which is local, that have done a lot of projects around the Durham area and southern New Hampshire. Other than some of the other ones that we didn't feel that gave us a really good handle on our other schools. It seems like they just did some aerial shots, didn't really go into the in-depth about our roof structures. So we felt most comfortable with Revision. So we would like to do a 21.7 kilowatt system, which produces 26,400 kilowatt hours per year. So that is 79 solar panels, all warranted for 25 years. So our normal average service building kilowatt hour usage is roughly about 100,000, maybe a little bit more, about 105,000. So this array would be almost a quarter of what we normally produce for energy for that building. Typical life of the actual pieces of equipment is about 40 years. We would be on the hook for the inverter, which translates the energy from AC to DC, and that's about that lasts about 20 years. Revision will maintain the system. This will give us some real-time generation dashboard that students would be able to tap into through a website. Also maybe even a screen-mounted dashboard in one of the buildings. We want to go that direction anyway, school-specific, so this is going to allow students to see real-time what's happening on the property. We have the service building roof that we're looking at is, obviously it's a pitched roof, but we have a large portion of the roof that is southern exposed, which seems to be very, very ideal. The existing roof over the entire service building is about 12 years old. Many people have questions about what's the lifespan. It being pitched with 30-year architectural shingles being on that roof, and now with the potential of those being covered by solar panels only increases the life expectancy of it. So that's where we're at as far as roof life warranty. So they're normal shingles that would be on a household. Luckily, that's our service bay area, so if there was any repairs that need to be done to the roofing structure, could be done underneath because we would have the ability to work. Also, we would be able to coordinate if the panels needed to come off and a repair needed to be done underneath. So let's see here. So it's, I'll just get to some of the expenses and kind of the costs where I'm going with this. There's no cost upfront, obviously. This is worked over time. We do have a option to buy the system outright within 7 years, what they would call a power purchase agreement with Revision. Not only at the 7-year mark, we could have the opportunity to extend that to 20 years. At that 7 years, if we did decide to buy that out, it would cost the district roughly $16,809 to buy that out. The original system the system that will be installed, Revision's on the hook for, I believe it's about $56,000 for that particular system. As far as some of the translation, as far as what 26,000 kilowatt hours means as savings to us is roughly $2,200 a year. And one of the benefits of the purchasing power agreement, we have 3 different tiers that we can work in, which is either like a flat rate system or a variable rate system. So if, let's say we wanted to go a variable rate, if the rate of electricity increases, we would actually see more savings off of what the solar panels would produce. That's kind of all I got.
Sue, do you want to talk a little
Yeah.
bit about the financing and how that works, the piece that Jim just talked about in terms of?
It really doesn't impact us financially because it's offset by the savings. So over the course of time, we would just pay them. They would finance it actually because it's a small project and really is kind of a win-win situation for us. One of the things Jim didn't mention is, or maybe you did, that also is a teaching tool for our students. They'll set up a computer and show how much energy we're saving and how the solar panels work. So it's kind of a good educational tool for us. And it's kind of a slow way to get into solar, so we can kind of see how it goes and how it works for us. Other projects that we might invest in are expensive and, you know, a lot of controversy about some of them. I mean, without incentives and grants, solar doesn't always make sense. And right now, the other 2 companies we talked to, they kind of backed away and said, it really doesn't make sense for you to do this, which I, you know, appreciate that from them, hearing that from them. So this is kind of a way to start a small project and see how it goes and use it as a teaching tool. So.
Questions? Kenny?
So Durham has put in a large solar array on land that is in Lee, and Revision is the company that was involved with that. And it was a long process, and Durham has a very robust energy committee who really were in the weeds, kind of negotiating the contract and making sure it looked good. And I'm wondering if you had any input from them, if it would make sense to have the input from them?
Well, I was going to say, we hear from them all the time.
Yeah, I mean, the reason that we were comfortable with Revision is it's the exact same company that the town vetted. So we felt that, you know, going to other companies when the town of Durham had spent so much time vetting Revision, it just didn't make sense to us. So we're really basing this whole proposal off the work that Durham spent years putting together. So we're pretty comfortable that the proposal we have makes sense based on the work that the town of Durham did.
It doesn't make any sense to run the contract by that energy committee?
No, Kenny, it's a pretty simple contract. It's not nearly, because you had the town of Lee involved,
Right.
It took, you know, many more months. The contract for this project's pretty straightforward. It's a simple contract. You know, it's for a specific building, not for offsetting energy costs across the town.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a really kind of easy proposal to bring together. So I think it doesn't need any additional review. We always have our contracts reviewed by our attorneys, but we're comfortable with the language that we have.
Okay.
In particular, you know, the idea that the school system could buy out the solar, could buy out Revision in 7 years for, you know, less than $17,000. To me, if I was the sitting superintendent in 7 years, it's a no-brainer. You buy it and you own it and, you know, you maintain it, because they're basically, well, I shouldn't say this, but they're mostly a maintenance-free product, you know, and very easily accessible on the maintenance guide. So we were very deliberate in sticking our toe in the water, so to speak, and not, you know, doing the dramatic issue that the town did, and we based it all on previous work that you guys did. So I think we're okay with where we are.
And it'll be a fixed array as opposed to an array that will shift.
Correct.
Season, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, because we have the southern exposure, it doesn't need the shift.
Okay. And do you need a motion to move forward with this?
Yes.
Is that what you
So
would?
yes.
Would like, so I would like to move that we approve the service building solar project that was presented to us just now.
Okay, anybody second? Maria, second. Discussion? Dan?
Just had another question. Jim, just want to say, first of all, thank you for all the work that, and Sue, you too, that you've put in over the past couple of years. And I think this is a really pragmatic approach. One question that you may have already talked to Revision about, you mentioned that it would be going on a pitched roof. I don't know a lot about solar arrays, but from friends I know who have them, snow and ice coming off of the panels can be a safety issue. Has that been addressed, or?
Yeah, that current side is now somewhat near the shot put area of the athletic field. So we don't have any activities out there in the wintertime. Okay. It's not a pitch or part of the pitch roof that goes into a parking lot. It's completely off our property or out of harm.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
I have two questions. One is that, so I'm looking at, well, I guess they weren't numbered, but if they needed to be repaired or replaced, like, so if there was some sort of, natural disaster or something and they were damaged, so is that something that our insurance, like the school district insurance would cover, or how would that work in that sort of a situation?
In the revision, they own the panels.
Okay.
So everything's warranted, not only the manufacturer warranty, but they take out a specific policy because they're putting their stuff on our real estate.
Okay. And then, and the last point, I didn't quite understand. It says, by entering into the long-term PPA, the school district is committing for at least 6 years, up to 20 years. The obligation would remain in place until such time as the school district purchased. So that's just saying that it's just, the terms are just going to continue. So if we didn't purchase it, it would just continue
Right.
with the current. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Maria?
Revision put in our solar panels. Worked great last winter, the winter before, when we had so much snow. It, probably 6 weeks that nothing happened because it was covered. So I was wondering if at this point they have any kind of heat suggestions for a heat sling, along the bottom of the building roof, like lots of people have for.
To be honest,
making-
we never considered that nor asked that question. So
I would
don't know.
ask them,
I
because
will.
6 weeks without any action
Right.
was aggravating to me.
It's not Maria, where you have your panels, Maria, is it sloped as?
Oh, yeah.
It is sloped
yeah.
as well,
Yeah.
so, and it's still stuck up there.
But I wasn't willing to climb up to get it.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, we're ready to vote. All in favor of the motion on the table? So 6 in favor, student rep in favor.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Thank you for letting me go first.
Okay. And now back to retirement incentive?
Back to the retirement incentive. So, let me just get back to that page. Retirement incentive. There we go. So I had given you a communication prior to the current communication related to the idea that the board would consider a retirement incentive for staff. And I just want to point out the differences between, they're very minor, but in the original proposal, it was my understanding that the guild had agreed to the idea that we would have impact areas, K5, 6, 8, 9, 12, K12, and so forth. And we had had a couple of conversations around that, but then when we got together the last time, just before the last board meeting, they said, well, we've been thinking about this and we're a little bit uncomfortable about it. And the nature of their discomfort was that it would be possible for somebody with less years of experience in an impact area, say K4, K5, it would be possible for somebody with less service in the district and younger to be able to get the retirement incentive over somebody who had more service and was older in the district. So we came to the conclusion of adjusting the impact area to one impact area, K12. And then the process of determining who would receive the incentive would be based on years of service in the district, which is language that's in the contract in other areas, so it made sense that we would count years of service in the district. And then finally, the last factor would be that they have to be eligible for New Hampshire retirement at the point that they decide, well, by June 30th. So they'd have to be 60 or above. So the one place where I really wanted to protect the board's interest, because any retirement incentive has to be a win-win. There's no point in the board doing a retirement incentive if it doesn't have some benefit to the school system. And so the Guild agreed that if a more junior person decided that they wanted to take it, they were eligible and wanted to take advantage of the retirement system, and the board chose not to replace that position, then even though that person was more junior with less service, they would go to the top of the list. So that's how, basically I protected your interest in this discussion. Because the difference between a person who's retiring and being replaced is approximately a $20,000 savings to the district. A person who retires and is not replaced is about $100,000 savings to the district. So, we tried to craft an agreement that would benefit those who have the most service in the district and are the most senior in age, but also tried to benefit the district by making sure that should a more junior person decide they want to retire under the incentive, and we were not going to replace that position, then the district would be advantaged. So that was the methodology used. The Guild has, agrees with this process. I would tell you that without the incentive going out, meaning that you haven't authorized it, I have had more interest in retirements this year, but they mostly have been hinged on the idea that the district might consider an incentive. And so I have, the Guild did a survey and had 21 teachers express interest in an incentive type of retirement system. Without doing that, I have 17 people who have come forward who are interested in a retirement/incentive system independent of the Guild's work. So there's definitely interest on the staff. When I looked at the distribution I have, it is spread throughout the district, high school, middle school, elementary, special ed. So when I'm looking at the non-binding letters of intent that people have set B, it's definitely, there's an interest across the district. So I can't speak to the Guild specifically, but I would assume that their list of 21 is also across the district, because really I didn't try to get into their business. I just asked them to raise the flag to see if there was interest. And then I have my own list that was generated through staff just letting me know. So that's the proposal. The Teachers Guild contract with the board opens up this possibility in contract language. I've suggested 5 people would be eligible in this proposal. There's nothing that stops the board from saying it's 3 people or 12 people. I mean, it's really your call, 1, whether to do the incentive, and then 2, how many people you would consider. And you could say, at this point, let's not attach a number to it, and then if you wanted to, put the incentive out for consideration. We could then see how many real, how many of these people, either the Guild's list or my list, are actually going to put in a binding letter. And the difference is a binding letter. So this calls for a binding letter. And what that means is you have non-binding letters that I have. That's what I'm talking about. But once you put this out and somebody, Mrs. Smith from the English department at the high school puts in her letter based on this proposal, it's binding to her, so she can't pull it back. And with one exception. If she's not offered the incentive because you decide in the end to limit the number, then she could pull it back. So but it's binding only if they become eligible for the incentive. So I think that's pretty much covers the major issues. It's very, very similar to what we did 3 years ago. Again, I would just use the data that we have. We only had a couple of retirements last year without an incentive. And then when we did have the incentive 3 years ago, we had over 20 people. So it does make a difference in staff's decision about retirement. So I leave it to you to ask your questions.
My question to you is, would you rather us not put a number on it? I'm trying to give you as much flexibility as possible with the incentive. Because we have some of yellow sheets in that are sitting outstanding that are dependent on this, and trying to figure out how the best way to get the incentive out and get people who want to do it to commit early enough so that we can budgetarily count on that when we craft our final warrant.
You know, it's a great question, Al, and it's a question that, quite honestly, I only started contemplating today, as opposed, you know, when I crafted this, I was trying to be very specific and all that kind of thing. But as I was thinking about it today, I think it would be informative for the board, get a sense of how many people absolutely will retire with an incentive. And my thought was, maybe it's, you know, we put a limit here of 5, and then maybe 6 or 7 are absolutely firm. You know, that's pretty doggone close to 5. Then we get into a debate about going past 5. So today, literally, I was thinking, well, maybe putting it out there without a definitive number, we would then know more confidently how many people truly are interested, because everything now is, both the guild list and my list are nothing more than congestion.
And you'll know the impact areas too.
Exactly. So that was a thought I had today.
Yes, Penny?
And how did you originally come to the number 5?
Well, my initial thinking, Ken, was that I am very concerned about the middle school in particular, and not in the immediate sense like tomorrow, but I am concerned about the middle school in 4 school years. And my concern is generated from the long-range planning numbers and also the reality of what's happening at Mohammed right now in terms of a decline in enrollment. And, you know, I stress out about letting people go. You know, I've done it a lot in my career, and I don't enjoy saying to somebody who's doing a great job, I'm sorry, you can't work here next year because there's no students for you to teach. And what I see happening in 4 years is about 100 less students entering grade 5. And, you know, then the pressure will come, you know, we couldn't possibly lay off 2 teachers in grade 5, even though 100 less students are there, and we get ourselves into that proverbial knot trying to figure out, you know, should we, shouldn't we? And, you know, so I'm giving you a long answer, and I apologize, Ken. It's, I just don't want to get to a place where I'm firing someone. And if we can, spread it out over time, then, you know, we may not have to. So that's my logic. And I don't know if it's, you know, strong logic. It's just that, you know, in 40 years, I've laid off way too many people. And part of that is because of base closure. I laid off 135 people out of 175 people. And I handed the pink slips to every single person personally. And, you know, for the person getting the pink slip, it's just sad. It's just, you know, emotionally crippling. And I can tell you it's emotionally crippling for the person handing the pink slip. So if we could put a plan in place that would minimize that, I mean, it may not eliminate it, but I think everybody, I've been talking about the middle school decrease in students now for two school years. I've talked to the staff themselves. I've asked them to position themselves so that they would be eligible to transfer into other positions, which means they may have to go after additional education, or when something opens at the high school, be smart enough to ask for the transfer. And so all of those things together hopefully get us to a place where we can, lessen our staffing through attrition as opposed to, letting somebody go. I'm sorry for that long, it seems like a very long answer, but that's where I was coming from.
I think very important to state that, and I really respect you for saying that, and I think it probably is the sentiment of the board. A little bit hamstrung, though, because we have the group K to 12 without any sort of, maybe where we might need people or would want people to retire as middle school, but we're considering people as a block. So, and I understand that's the way it is, but one other thing, and I don't know if this will make sense. I understand keeping it open, but in a way, does that give us an unfair advantage? Because we will, it's a formula. You're going to add years of service to someone's age, and it's going to go down a list. And we're going to know the list, and then we're going to draw the line. Do we have to think about, does that become is that fair? Does it make it kind of...
From my perspective, from the superintendent's perspective, it's absolutely fair. It's the board is the manager, I represent you. For you to have that information is very appropriate. And then for you to make determinations based on how much money you want to spend or other considerations, perfectly appropriate. I mean, you need to have all the information that you need to make informed decisions about how many people. I would tell you that there's no way, even if the top 5 people were all middle school people tomorrow, they all would get replaced tomorrow because our student population is still 660 kids, and based on the long-range planning committee, it looks like it's going to be the same next year. So we're not in an immediate sense of the middle school. I'm just trying to, be cautious about, over the next 4 years.
But I kind of asked that. So let's say we're going down a list, and this might be crazy, but we see, the person who's number 7, we really don't want to lose them, or we don't think that's a good deal. So so you cut it off at 6. And I don't know if that's right or not, but part of me feels, rather than leaving it completely wide open, maybe we should set a floor and say we're going to offer it to at least this many, but with the flexibility, as it plays out, maybe we would go a little bit further. So I think
totally board discretion. So, I mean, there's no right or wrong on that. It's just how I was thinking today as I was thinking about this issue. Is that right?
Yeah, Sarah?
I'm struggling to follow the reasoning of offering the incentive now to handle not having to lay people off. I can totally appreciate not wanting to lay people off. That must be a horrific thing to do. But I don't understand. I mean, we're putting ourselves in a position, these teachers need to be replaced. I mean, if middle school teachers went now, they would need to be replaced. Exactly. Because we have the student population there that needs them. But in 4 years, we may not have that population. So then we're going to have to lay off those teachers that we hired to replace. So why not hold off the incentive till we have till we're going to have to reduce the teaching staff, and that way you're holding. I mean, and maybe I'm not thinking of something right. Maybe
I mean, again, there's no wrong answer here. It's really a strategic issue for the board. Al had mentioned the yellow sheets. So one of the strategic reasons for us to encourage some retirements is so that we can bring in the staffing we need due to enrollment increases at the high school with as little impact on the overall budget as possible. So that, on a practical basis, that's why I'm encouraging it this year more than ever because we all are aware of the impact of the proposed 17-18 budget, and so any available funds could be used to address the high school enrollment issues.
Al?
I had a couple thoughts on that. The hiring thing, my thought is that hopefully when we do the hiring to replace it, that you can look for people that have enough flexibility. Because what you're trying to gain is staffing flexibility to cover multiple opportunities. And so if you hire somebody new, I would hope that when we talk about that, that you can get somebody who's a little bit more flexible for the future. But the other thing I'm thinking, Kenny, is strategically getting the full list. It also gives us information if we are in the future going to use retirements to kind of reduce, getting an idea of what the real number is will give us a sense of when the next time we should offer a retirement incentive, I think.
Dan?
I guess my lack of knowledge on the overall trend of our board offering incentives, I'm feeling a little uneasy about. So, for example, if we were to do this, we would essentially be offering the second incentive in 3 years. We saw a very large spike in the first year. We saw, I think it was 3 retirements last year with no incentive. Yeah. I guess what I'm getting at is what are we doing to the natural process of people making a decision to retire?
Sure, that's a great question, Dan. So when the negotiating team was together and we were negotiating with the Guild, one of the issues that this district faces is a very top-heavy paradigm. It's not a bell curve. It's very skewed to the high end, high cost, because it only takes a teacher about 15 years to reach the top. So when you offer a retirement incentive, what you're hoping to do is skew the bell closer to the middle. We have examples in the recent past where we've done an incredibly successful job of that. Both Catherine and Jay last year did an amazing job replacing staff, finding great staff at far less cost than those they replaced. On the other hand, the reason we stopped the retirement incentive and took a breather was we weren't guaranteeing that result, and there was a teacher we hired during the retirement incentive that was more costly than the person they replaced, and that's when the board kind of said, time out. Retirement incentive is supposed to advantage us as well as the employee. It's not advantaging us if we're hiring staff that are more costly than people going out. So, we did a lot of soul searching on the administrative team about how we could make sure that the result was what was intended. And part of that was we profiled a teacher we didn't profile a teacher at the beginning of the contract because that's not who, it's just not our style, but we also made sure the profile was a master's level person at the middle of the pay scale. And we kept that as the template, and no administrator since we created that template has tried to go beyond it. They've all tried very hard to bring in staff that are talented but also less costly. We hired a kindergarten teacher at Massway this past year, and I would say less costly does not necessarily mean a kid out of college. The person we hired at Massway was a person who took years off to raise her family, got her education, and is blended right into the very senior staff we have at Massway at the kindergarten level, and everybody praises her. So if we are thoughtful and we follow the board's intent, then we can bring in talented people. We don't always have to bring in talented people at the top of the scale. We can bring in talented people. If you look at the research, 7 years under your belt gives you a pretty talented individual. They know how to teach, and then you tie them into a district mentor who teaches them, the district. Then you end up with a very talented individual working for us. So It's not about age, it's about bringing in someone who is still extremely capable, which is really what drives this district. And that's what we want administratively, and that's what you want as a board. So, long answer, we're trying to bring that skewed bell closer to the center than it is now, and it's a very skewed bell.
And just a quick follow-up. So over the past 10 years, how often has the district's board offered an incentive? Have there been gaps for long periods of time?
Oh, yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sarah?
A clarification question on the exception piece. So am I reading that correctly, that we could, as a board, end up paying for 6 retirements?
Yes, on the way this is formulated.
If we went with the cap of 5, the way this is formulated, you could potentially pay 6,
Or even more
if we didn't cap it.
or if there were people who were in that category. There might be more than one in that category.
Right.
Okay. Other questions or comments? So we don't have a motion on the floor yet. Oh, Maria?
I feel like I'm too dense to really grasp the ins and outs of this. Not only too dense, but too cheap to spend money when we're not trying to reduce staff. I could see this as a great way of facing the realities of life if we needed to downsize. But if we don't need to downsize now, and with no guarantees that it's actually going to save us a lot of money, I have a hard time grasping that this is the best thing I should do. So help me out.
It's only the best thing to do if you're trying to generate the ability to address the staffing needs at the high school due to the increased enrollment. So what I was trying to do, Maria, is find a mechanism for you as a board to be able to address that, and by reducing the staff by using an incentive, it provides you that vehicle. So fundamentally for this year, that's what's driving the proposal.
Using that money that we're going to save, that we might save.
Well, I mean, based on our current paradigm, you will save.
Well, you said we replaced somebody that cost more than...
We did do that once, and I
Right.
got my hand slapped very hard publicly, and we haven't done it since.
And also, it's a very, as I see it, temporary saving, because, next year they're a step up again, and it's pretty soon they're as expensive as they ever were, the ones that we have. So,
And that's absolutely true. People work through the scale, they become expensive again.
good. So, being dense and cheap. Here I am.
So I'm wondering if, because we don't actually have a motion on the floor, so I'm wondering if we could maybe have a motion?
Yeah,
Al?
I was just going to do that, actually. I'll make a motion to offer the retirement incentive that Dr. Morse proposed, and in my motion, I would keep it uncapped. I would allow, just to allow us to see what the real interest is.
Okay, is there a second?
I would second it, but I think I really need to recuse myself when we come to making that decision. At some point, my life might or might not want to do something like this, and I think I shouldn't be voting on it. So I would have seconded, so we'd have a vote, but I should.
Okay, Dan?
I will second it.
Dan will second, so we have, okay, so motion and it's been seconded, so more.
Dan's the official
Yeah,
second.
yeah, Dan's the second.
Thanks.
So more discussion. Al?
Can I just ask why you're recusing yourself?
At some point, and I've not heard anything from my wife that she's interested in retiring, but at some years she will retire, and as we go through these retirement incentives, I don't think I should be offering something, as you pointed out, there are downsides of it, and I shouldn't be doing something that maybe might be a financial gain for my family. Just seems a conflict of interest.
Okay. Al?
So I made the motion because I think there are some real, Jim says I always say it's challenging. This is a really challenging budget, but there are some really pressing needs that we have that have come up at the high school, and offering the retirement incentive allows us to meet those needs without exceeding our budgetary goal. So I think that it's the best way that we can be fiscally prudent and meet our needs. That's why I motioned it.
And I guess I would just say that we're not, at this time, we're really not committing. I mean, we could come back and look at the list and say, we changed our mind. We're not actually committing to any number at this time, because we said we're going forward to see who comes up on the list, and we can certainly limit it, or, say we're going to cut it off at 3, I suppose, or something like that, I guess, is my thinking.
So just in terms of clarification, if you move forward on this, you're committing yourself to the incentive, but not to a number.
Oh, okay, so we'd at the very least have to offer like one incentive.
I would think in terms of integrity with the staff, you
Okay.
want to, because you
Yeah.
wouldn't want to float something and then say, oh, we changed our mind. That wouldn't be fair to
Okay,
them.
okay, got it, okay, all right.
Could I ask a point of clarification? If the board chooses not to support this, and we have a pink sheet that really deals with a policy that will be voted on, perhaps voted on, plus we saw the yellow sheets, is there any way that you see being able to meet the budget goal that we gave you, but also incorporating that pink sheet without this move?
Yeah, there's one mechanism left to you, and that is to wait till May on the yellow sheets / pink sheet and see what the real cost is of the health insurance. But that's a real gamble because, we budgeted for 14.1%, and that's the maximum it could be. And we gave you the history of that in the budget workshop. There have been times when the guaranteed maximum rate really was the guaranteed maximum rate. And then we have the experience just from last year where the guaranteed maximum rate was 16.8%, and it came in at 8.8. So that becomes kind of the Las Vegas solution, I think, is how I would characterize it, a bit of a gamble. This one is a more certain way of being able to address those staffing needs.
Dan?
So I guess getting back to the issue I was raising earlier, I'm still worried that we're creating a sort of artificial cycle. Do we have numbers on the average numbers of retirements over the past 10 years outside of incentives, like prior to the incentive 2 years ago?
I'm pretty sure we can put that together, Dan. I don't have it at my fingertips, but Wendy keeps a pretty accurate list of retirees and intent, so I think we can put that together for you relatively quickly.
And off the top of your head, do you, and maybe you don't, you would need to see the numbers as well, but do you see cycles? Is it relatively steady? Because I think what I've seen in the year and a half, but over the past 2 years, that I've been on the board, we had a tremendous number of retirements 2 years ago. We had only 3 last year. If I were a teacher and I saw this trend and this, the boards year after year indicating interest in using this process. I think it would be wise to hold out for the next incentive. Retirement is a daunting prospect with insurance costs and whatnot. In terms of looking at this as a mechanism to help us through this very difficult budget, I see that. And part of me wants to support it for that reason, but I wonder, are we kicking a can down the road next year? Next year's budget could be worse. So if, there might have been 7 retirements next year and we get only 2 or 3 because we've established this trend of every other year offering a retirement incentive, are we essentially making things more difficult in the coming years? And I'm not asking you to answer that question. I guess I'm just sharing what I'm thinking. I do fully appreciate that the core concept behind this is a long view and, is the right concept. I also share the sentiment that I don't want us to have to be laying off our staff. But with that said, I fear we may be worsening a situation through this mechanism, and I'm just sharing that concern.
I mean, I've used this mechanism outside of Oyster River before I was here, and it's a mechanism that really draws people who aren't seriously considering retirement to seriously consider it. So it absolutely works if this is what we're trying to do to free up resources because we don't want to increase this budget any further than we're already looking at. So it is from a practical perspective as your manager. I think this is a very rational course for the board to take, even when we do have concerns, because this is a real need that we have. And the bell curve is so skewed to the right that I'm less concerned about the issues you raised, Dan, only because, when we did negotiations, we had 75% of our staff into the top tier. And we have a lot of people who are age eligible who are not choosing to retire. And that's very purposeful on their part because, when you go into retirement, as you said, it's a daunting task. What makes it even more daunting in New Hampshire is you go into retirement if you're not Medicare eligible with no insurance. So, again, going back to the very beginning of this presentation, I just think it's a deliberate way for the board to make a move to adjust the current budget, but also benefit those employees who would be enticed by an incentive. When you look at 2 or 3 people retiring last year compared to over 20, the previous year, you can see that it does draw people out. We have people who are age eligible, who have been age eligible, quite frankly, for, well, at least one person's been age eligible to retire for 12 years and has chosen not to. The person happens to be an extraordinary teacher, and I don't look forward to the day that she decides to, because that's the other piece that happens, and this is, where Denise was 3 years ago. I'm concerned that we'll draw all of our senior talent. I'm less concerned about that because I can see the demographics of our staff, and we have many staff who are senior, who are doing a great job by us, but who would be enticed by something like this. So for me, it's a more practical issue than perhaps philosophical.
Maria?
Again, I apologize for not understanding this completely. So we give a retirement incentive to 5 people. They retired. To retire, and we pay them, and we save some money to hire the pink sheet first and then the yellow sheets. And then pretty soon, it's next year's budget. And now we have a bigger staff. We had a 3.25 goal this year, plus all the other money, which actually then adds up to 5% increase, 5 point something. So that's a bigger bottom line for next year, plus all this new staff. What do you think, Sarah? How many percent are we going for next year? Doing this, it isn't like we're saving money and putting it in the bank or putting it towards not having the 5 point whatever increase. It's to actually increase the base, as I see it. And maybe I'm wrong, but
So I think the piece, Maria, if you'd let me indulge, is
Yes,
that
please.
you're talking about increasing a staff that we absolutely have to increase to address the number of students that we brought in through the tuition agreement with Barrington. You know, we literally have to increase the staff to accommodate, and we said that right from the beginning of the agreement, that we would accommodate those increases. So, you know, for me, I don't know how we accommodate those increases without doing something like this, other than making the 5.06, you know, 5.75, you know, because we still have to face down that issue. You can say, no, we're not going to bring in the staff, but you're going to have the situation that we found so uncomfortable the last meeting when we were talking about algebra classes being at 30 at the middle school. If we don't have the staffing to address those class sizes, then those class sizes will increase. And in terms of the pink sheet, without any vehicle to fund that, it doesn't get funded at all unless, again, you decide to increase the budget. So what I'm trying to do is get you the staffing you need without increasing the budget
for 1 year.
for 1 year.
But, and again, I guess the piece too is, I hear what Dan is saying as far as, you know, if you come to expect this, and this was why I was saying last year, I said, there's no way I'm going to approve that this year, because you know, and the reality is it's always a gamble for the staff, because this can be a different board, and this could go away, and that's the reality of it. So where I had that same concern, Dan, and that was very much my reason. It was like, we're just not doing it. We don't want to get in the habit of doing this every year. Plus, I have a very legitimate, you know, concern about not losing too many talented staff all at one time. So to me, it actually isn't an issue that we only maybe had 3 last year, I guess is kind of the way I'm thinking of it. You know, I hear the concern, you know, for Maria as far as, you know, is this really gonna help us in the long term? I think for this year, it makes sense. I can't say that I would support this next year or any other year, but for this year, it makes sense to me. And there was a hand over here. Sarah?
There's so many arguments that have been thrown out that it's hard to know which one to address. But so definitely, I see the benefit it could have to the short, you know, the tight budget issue. I think that's assuming, though, that none of these people choose to retire if an incentive is not offered. I mean, I think last year we didn't offer an incentive and 3 people chose to retire anyway. What was initially proposed to us was 5 people. We offer it to 5 people. That's only 2 away from those who volunteered to do it last year without an incentive. And I also, as much as I love the idea of getting some, you know, less experienced staff, younger staff in here, I think that's revitalizing in a lot of ways. I also don't want to pigeonhole the staff and require that they hire someone. And I know we're not laying that out there, but I mean, that's essentially what this conversation is, that the understanding, the intent of the board is that you hire less expensive people. Our administrators have done a phenomenal job with that in the past few years as far as getting quality young professionals or less experienced professionals. But I've also been on hiring committees, not in this district, where we've been told, you know, where the candidate, the only candidate we wanted was a candidate with 10 years experience. And that's a tough position to be in. And I don't want to be the board that's pinning teachers down and administrators down and saying, you know, our intent is that you're not going to do that. So I have a tough time really laying that sort of down as a line too, and I guess because of the fact that I am not convinced that we would not get some retirements, given the fact that there are, over 20 people thinking that they may retire, I can't support this.
Maria?
I make a motion that we postpone this to the next meeting when we have a full board, so that we don't end up with one abstaining, and
Oh, that's true.
so that's my motion if there's a
All right, is there a second? Sarah? Okay, so Maria moved, Sarah seconded. Any discussion about postponing the decision for till next meeting?
So
Yes.
Al
Oh,
already had a motion on the table that was seconded by Dan.
right,
so-
that was for the retirement incentive. So this is an
And
amend, this is, oh, okay.
This is the motion to postpone that motion to next.
Thank you.
So my question actually is just a practical one. So when is our next board meeting? December 2nd. So does that? 7th.
December
And then
7th.
The time they have to put this in is December 30th, is that correct? Does that give enough time, I assume, to carry it out a couple of weeks?
Well, I mean, ideally, you'd want to give staff as much time as possible so they can talk to the retirement incentive, retirement people. But it's going to be what it's going to be. I mean, if people know this is floating out, hopefully they've been meeting with the retirement people already. And, yeah, normally you'd want a lot more than 2 weeks, and it may truncate who's interested only because they can't get their information in time.
Okay, so the motion is to postpone the vote on the original
Yep.
motion until the next regular board meeting. Are we ready to vote on that amendment? Okay. All in favor of that amendment, raise your hand. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4 in favor, and the student rep in favor. All opposed? So 1 opposed. Is that right?
Did
No.
Kenny abstain?
Kenny, right, Kenny abstained, okay. All right, so then so we will wait until our next meeting to take action on that.
And if, I don't know if it's appropriate, but I made that decision spur of the moment to not vote. But I would appreciate if the board consider whether that is the right thing for me to do or not.
May I contribute to that, Ken? I think the only time you should recuse yourself is if it's specific to your wife. When it's not specific to your wife, there are 399 other employees who you are recognizing in your vote. So unless it's specific, I don't think, my opinion is that you should not recuse.
I was going to say, if your wife was depending on, if her retirement hinged on this incentive, then you'd have to recuse yourself. But if it doesn't, then it really doesn't affect you.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Okay. Draft of the 2017 warrant.
So I thought I would get this out there early, so you could start to look at it. The standard warrant articles for your moderator, your school board, and then we have the guild contract this year. And then I asked Wendy to include the article to put money into the trust funds. After our conversation, we're probably going to utilize some of those, so that's out there. And then the major warrant article for the entire budget, 5 articles. The only thing I can say is there may be another article. I'm going to talk to the trustee of the trust funds, cleaning up some of the articles we have. We've used the track fund. We might want to abolish that one, get rid of that one. I know I talked with him. There's a lot of different things out there. We might want to consolidate some, so I'll talk to him, and we may have another article to clean up some of the warrant articles. But other than that, I think that's it.
The one I was going to ask is the fund that we've put on there in Article 4 is the Facilities Development Capital Reserve Fund. Do we want to change that to the Benefits Stabilization Fund?
We could.
No, I mean, I think
we
the
could-
the
yeah.
funds that we should put on there are the funds that we're
Yeah.
taking money out of.
Sure, and we can do that easily
So
enough.
if we do
Yeah.
that, we should technically have 2 warrants then, one for,
Well, we could, the emergency fund doesn't require a warrant.
Oh.
That's, at the end of the year, we can make that decision, so we can, but we can talk about that, but, you know. I may change Article 4 to the Benefit Stabilization Fund. And I can do that. Anything else? Put it back on the next meeting and we'll talk again. Thanks. Okay. Okay, so now we're down to action items. Superintendent, oh, just the policies, okay. Yeah, so yes,
So,
Kenny.
This seems like a night of,
Oh, man.
but when we have our policy for extended learning opportunity, I think it would not be, I think it'd be irresponsible for us to pass the policy and not really be able to
Staff it.
to reasonably put that policy into effect. So I recommend we don't take any action on policy IHBI and then all the other policies that follow it that are really linked with that, because I think we need to have the discussion about whether we're going to add that position to our,
so you're suggesting we postpone action?
on policies IHBI, IKAA, IKF, ILBAA, and IMBD until we have discussion about adding an extended learning coordinator.
Maria, you're
second.
influencing the board.
What can I say?
I'm wondering if all, because they're all tied together, is that what
Yeah.
we're
That's-
we're
they all
really
came
kind
up
of thinking?
together.
Yeah, that we need to, okay. All right.
So can we do policy
That would,
GBEB? the-
right,
I'll second that out.
okay.
For the first one, we have a
Oh, we have a motion on the table. to-
Well, that wasn't a motion, though, that was,
Well, actually, we could,
I second.
I made
Yeah.
it.
for just, for GBED, for,
We have a motion to
For the-
postpone.
oh, that was a motion, I'm sorry, I didn't
was
hear that as a
Kenny and
motion.
Al, right?
Okay, Kenny and Al, okay, sorry.
Kenny and Maria.
Kenny and Maria, okay.
Kenny and Maria.
Sorry, I thought we didn't have a motion, I thought it was just discussion. Okay, so the motion is to postpone action on those policies until our next meeting.
discussion on the extended learning coordinator. That one.
Yes.
Yeah, oh, okay, yeah, until we have that discussion. So, all in favor of postponing of, okay, so
This is not
6 in
postponed.
favor and
These
the,
have been, were they moved? No,
Yeah, I mean,
they're rescheduled.
they're rescheduled.
okay,
Okay, so I'll make a motion for policy GBEB, student conduct with staff, to adopt it for second read.
okay. Do I have a second? Dan seconds it, okay.
Staff was.
Any discussion on staff conduct
staff
with
conduct.
students? Are we ready to vote? All in favor? So we have 6 in favor, no, 5,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
6 in favor, student rep in favor. So staff conduct with students, GBEB, passes. Okay, agenda here,
Future meetings.
which I just lost. Here we go.
Oh, public comment.
Oh, yeah, public comment?
School committee. School board committee.
Oh, excuse me, School board committee updates. Anybody? No committee updates?
No.
All right, public comment.
Hi, I'm Dean Rubine from the public. Today I want to talk about scoliosis. My daughter's been diagnosed with scoliosis, and I've been talking with a few people at school, and it seems between the middle school and high school over the last couple of years, it's around 10 girls. In the old days, they used to screen for scoliosis, and we think they stopped because the research on back braces was iffy. But in 2013, they actually finished a very big survey and decided that back bracing does work to help avoid surgery. And I was hoping you guys could look into the actual numbers of scoliosis. It's usually girls around 8th or 9th grade. And maybe revive this screening and avoid some surgeries. I know there was at least one surgery last year. Thanks.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve. All right. Okay, so closing actions. We have our future meeting dates. We do have a budget workshop on November 30th, and then our regular board meeting on December 7th.
I just noticed that it says 5:30. It should be 6:30, right?
Right,
I
because
think originally we had a manifest, but it doesn't make sense to do that at 5:30.
Right.
6:30.
I thought it was 5:30 because there were going to be so many
That's-
manifests.
No, it should be 6:30.
Okay, so that's 6:30 for the manifest. All right. Okay. Is that, yes, Maria?
We adjourn.
Okay, and seconded by Dan. All in favor? All right. Thank you.